Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Happy to have you here for another video. If you're new, welcome. Today we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Summer Wells, and this one has been highly requested from you guys. If you didn't know, I do have a request form linked in the description box of every video, and I get quite a bit of requests on there, but when I see something repeatedly requested, I always look into it. And the Summer Wells case has been requested so much over the last 6 months. And I didn't do it right away because there was very little information to work with initially. Unfortunately, there's not that much more 6 months later, but I do think that there is enough that we can talk about it. And I know so many of you have been following this case. For some reason, it's been one of those cases that's been heavily followed on social media. And I know people have their opinions on this one for sure. And that being said, I want to make a note before we even start that this case is still active. It's still being investigated and things can always change. I am recording this video December 17th. Things will change over time. I'm not sure if there'll be new updates by the time that this is posted. If there are, I will have those in a pinned comment. But just keep in mind that we don't know everything there is to know when it comes to this case. We do not have all the information that we want. We don't have all the answers to the questions that we have yet. I know people have really strong feelings about this case, but today I'm going to try to remain as unbiased as I can. I just want to present you the facts that are available and let you guys decide for yourselves. And I also wanted to mention that there are several parts of this entire story that just don't add up, don't match up, and don't make much sense. There's a lot of he said, she said, and just general inconsistencies. So we're going to try to work through that as best as we can. The main goal here today is to bring awareness to the disappearance of Summer Wells. Also, as always, anyone that we talk about in this video is innocent until proven guilty by a court of law. So this is Summer Moon Utah Wells. She was born in 2016 in Hawkins County, Tennessee. These are her parents, Candace and Dawn. And they also had 3 boys prior to having Summer. Summer was the youngest in the family, and she was the only daughter in the family, but she was a very tough little girl. Growing up, she did everything that her brothers did, from fishing to playing in the mud. She was not afraid to be the boss of her older brothers either. She seemed to really kind of rule the house. Her mom has even said that she was the one to keep the boys in line.
She'd give them a run for their money every day. She'd give them a run for their money, and there was times, we'd be, at our boys, like, don't do this and don't do that. And next thing you know, the stick would come up and just whop them, and it'd be like, Summer, don't do that.
Summer was the boss of the family.
Yeah,
She
typical girl.
When they get out of line, she'd put them in line.
She'd do her best.
She loved to play in the mud and the water and swing on her swing and enjoy dirt.
When I run the lawnmower around, she would run behind me. When the boys run their bikes around, as fast as that little bike could go, she would be behind them running and keeping up with them, no problem,
Now, one big point of discussion in this case online was Summer's haircut. She did have a shaved head, just like her brothers, and the reason why her head was shaved has been very inconsistent depending on who tells the story. Candace originally said that Summer wanted her head shaved so that she could match her brothers and her mom, who also had short hair.
She was a tomboy. I shaved my head. She wanted to have her head shaved like me and the boys did.
Just a few seconds later, in literally the same interview clip, her father, Don, says that her hair was just getting out of control. And so they made the decision to shave it, and that her mother, Candace, also shaved her head so that she wouldn't feel bad about it and they could, all match.
She tried to shave her head
in
the back and make it, I think you can see it in some of the pictures, and it was getting out of control. So we decided to shave her head off and let it grow back long, and she shaved her head so she wouldn't feel bad, but it didn't bother her.
Of course, people remember things differently, and this doesn't really have anything to do with her disappearance. Now, even though Summer was a very rambunctious, kind of rough and tumble type of girl, she also had a more girly side, you could say. She loved dancing, twirling around, watching Paw Patrol, which was one of her favorite shows, and her favorite movie, Frozen. She actually loved to pretend that she was Elsa, and her mom said it was just one of her favorite things to do. Dawn said that she loved to twirl while he would, hold a finger out, and she would twirl underneath it until his arm got tired. And she was known for being a total daddy's girl. Even though Dawn worked full-time to provide for their family, Summer was still around him whenever she could be.
I just never expected for anyone to get a hold of my heart like she has, because I try to guard my heart as much as I can, but she holds my heart in her little hands, and I love her with all my heart.
Don works as a drywaller, so he's normally out every day on whatever project he's been assigned to, and that keeps him pretty busy. So as of spring of 2021, Summer was 5 years old and not enrolled in school yet. And her mother, Candace, said that they were working on all the paperwork to get her going for the following fall.
This was supposed to be her first year of
She's
kindergarten.
We did all the what?
I took care of everything.
Yeah.
I had her already took on all of her shots and registered in the school for ready for this year.
Candace was home with the kids all the time. She was a stay-at-home mom, and Dawn was really the provider for them, so she took care of all of that kind of stuff. Their home is located on Ben Hill Road in Beech Creek, which is an unincorporated town in Hawkins County, Tennessee. And if you didn't know, an unincorporated town is basically just a town that doesn't have its own local government, and instead it answers to the county. So Beech Creek itself doesn't have its own law enforcement, but Hawkins County does, so that's who enforces their laws. Now, there is a report out there that says that the Wells family owns like 11 acres of land. However, I've not been able to confirm that. I do know that they own quite a bit of land out there, though. Most of their property is really thick with trees, but on the very top of the hill is their home. And there's also a white trailer up there that Candace's mom, who's also named Candace, lives in. Now, since they both have the same name, and I know that's going to get confusing for you guys, I'm going to refer to Candace's mother as Candy, and that is a nickname that a lot of people call her. Now, it's unclear when exactly Candy moved onto their property, but at some point she did, and her trailer is parked about 25 feet from their house. And their family also has anywhere from 8 to 13 dogs living on the property. I'm not sure exactly how many. That's another thing that's been unconfirmed. Now, according to Summer's dad, Don, Beech Creek is not always the safest area. He has talked about how there is an active drug gang and also how they've had property theft on their land.
It seems isolated, but we do have neighbors, and then you got the drug thing going on, and where we live at, you got certain groups of people, and I'm not going to mention them by name, but you got these boys and those boys, they're all related, and they think that they run everything. And a lot of people for years have run moonshine out there, probably manufactured meth and other stuff like that, and they think that they are the Bloods and the Crips of the hillbillies. And we've had people steal our dogs and leave their mutts for as long as we've been there. We've had people come up and just take various things, steal our gas in the middle of the night or whatever, and there's only certain kind of people that are up all day and night, stuff like that.
Don says that they haven't really had any run-ins with this drug gang. However, he does say that he believes they think of his family as a target, although he doesn't go on to, really explain what he means by that or why he thinks that. So to recap before we go any further, the Wells family lives in a secluded area in Hawkins County. Living on the property, there are 4 kids, Summer and her 3 brothers, who I'm not going to be mentioning by name in this video, Dawn, Candace, and Grandma Candy. So now let's get into what happened on June 15th, 2021. Apparently, the morning of June 15 was a morning just like any other for the Wells family. Summer had slept in her parents' bed the night before, which was something she did often. They were kind of trying to work her out of this, but They just let her that night. And the next morning, Don had to get up for work. So he tried to be really quiet so he wouldn't wake her. And Don says that he does not remember exactly what time he left for work that morning. He said it was sometime between 7 and 8. Most likely. His work site at the time was in Jonesboro, which he said is about 45 minutes from their house, although some say that the drive is closer to like an hour. Shortly after Dawn left for work, Candace wakes up because she has to take Grandma Candy to a doctor's appointment, and that is at the Holston Valley Medical Center in Kingsport, Tennessee. And Grandma Candy's appointment was at 8 a.m. So, since it's like a 40-minute drive, it's safe to assume that Don probably left the house on the earlier side if he was already gone when Candace was leaving. So that makes you think he left closer to 7 a.m. And Don and Candace have said from the beginning that neither of them are good at remembering times. So, we're just working with what we have available. So the appointment that they were going to for Grandma Candy was for her artificial knee. It had actually been bothering her since they had gone on this family trip to Gatlinburg, and I guess one of the boys ran into it, or I don't know, somehow caused it to feel sore. So she wanted to have it checked out. What exactly happened to her knee is unclear. But again, I'm not sure if it makes a difference here. Now, the following part is going to be a little bit confusing because we are going to be hearing two different people's recall of events. We're going to be talking about Candace's recollection of what happened on the morning of June 15th, as well as Hunter's. And I will explain who Hunter is in a second. According to Candace, they dropped Grandma off at her appointment at 8 a.m. and then her and Summer are just sitting in the car in the parking lot when she suddenly gets a call from Hunter. Now, Hunter is a 15-year-old family friend of the Wells. His mom is named Allison, or Allie, as a lot of people call her, and she and Candace used to be very close friends. However, they got in some type of fight, and they're no longer friends. However, Candace has stayed in touch with her son, Hunter. Candace has said that Hunter has always been like a son to her, so she wanted to continue having a relationship with him and for him to see her kids, etc. So Candace and Summer are sitting outside of the hospital in the car. They get a call from Hunter, who wants to know what they're doing. Candace explained that they are waiting for Candy to finish her appointment and that they are in Kingsport. And Hunter asked them if they want to come over to his place and hang out for a bit while they wait.
I know I went to the hospital at 8 with my mom, dropped her off, and I was sitting there, and Hunter called me and asked me what I was doing. I said I was sitting at the hospital in the parking lot waiting on my mom to get done. And he said, well, why don't you all come over? I said, well, as long as your mom says it's okay. And I guess he woke her up or said something to her, and he said, yeah, she said it's fine for a little bit.
So Candace and Summer head that way, and they are in Candy's truck. And there's not a lot of information about what they did over there or how long they were there, but at some point, Candace gets a call that Candy is done, ready to be picked up. So Hunter asks if he can join them to go pick up Candy, and Candace says that's fine as long as you ask your mom. He asks his mom, she says yes. So the three of them, Summer, Candace, and Hunter, all head over to the hospital to pick up Grandma Candy. Once they pick up Candy, the four of them head to a Walgreens to get a prescription filled. They decide to do the drive-through pharmacy, and while they're in the car, Candace gets a call from Dawn. According to Candace, Dawn was just calling to check up on them, see how the appointment was going, see what they were doing. And she said that Dawn calls pretty frequently. It's very normal for him to check in with her multiple times a day because he's gone at work all the time and he likes to be in the loop about his family. When they get to the front of the drive-thru, they drop off the prescription and they're told it's going to take 30 minutes. So Candace decides that she's going to take everyone down to Warriors Path State Park. And there's a good place there that she can let Summer swim. Summer loved to swim. In fact, she was already wearing her swimsuit. So they figured it was a good way to kind of kill the time. So they head towards this water hole, and on the way, Candace says they make two stops. The first stop was to a discount smoke shop where she and Candy got out to buy 3 cans of Twisted Tea. If you don't know what Twisted Tea is, it's, just basically Arnold Palmer, but boozy. After the smoke shop, their next stop was to a place called Hippie House, which is a newer business that sells CBD, nicotine, vape pens, and I've also heard THC, but I am not sure about that. It's Tennessee. I find that hard to believe. But maybe they're selling like Delta 8 or something like that. While they were there, Candace buys some Skittles flavored vape pens, a couple of them, and then they're off to the water hole. When they finally got to Warrior's Path, Summer went straight into the water, and I guess Hunter walked off into the woods. Candace says that she doesn't know why Hunter ran off into the woods, but that she and Candy then sat on the side of the water and watched Summer play. Eventually, Hunter comes out of the woods and joins Summer. Candace remembers Summer playing in the water just the way that she always did, that she was having a really good time, and Candace even made a TikTok of Summer playing in the water. Eventually, they decide to go back to the Walgreens and get the prescription. They pack up the car, head back that way. They get the prescription, and then before dropping Hunter off, they make 2 additional stops. One was to a Sonic, and they all got slushies. And the second stop was to a grocery store called Priceless. Candace said that they were in the grocery store for just 5-10 minutes. They had to grab a couple essentials like milk, bread, you know, stuff like that. And after the grocery store, Candace drives Hunter back to his house, drops him off, and then the 3 of them, Summer, Grandma Candy, and Candace, all drive back to Beach Creek. And there's actually this photo of Summer sleeping on the way home on top of the 2 gallons of milk that they got at the grocery store. And this has kind of become one of the most famous images in this case, you could say. And the photo is actually a screenshot of a video that Candy took because Candace was driving. Apparently they were just trying to take a picture of her, but they accidentally took video instead, and this was taken at 3:09 p.m. Now, before we head into the next part, let's go through Hunter's version of events that day. Now, he shares a similar timeline as far as what they did and where they went, but he remembers the morning a little differently. In Hunter's version of events of that morning, he says that Candace texted him that morning. He said that she messaged him and said that Candy was going to be at an appointment at the hospital, and he calls her back after this and asks if they want to come over and hang out at his house while they wait for the appointment to end.
So that day that she texted me, and she said, my grandma's in the hospital. Well, her mom's in the hospital, but we called her grandma at the time like we used to. So I called her up. I said, y'all want to come over here for a bit? Because she's going to be in the hospital for a while. Because she messed up her knee or whatever.
Now, Candace doesn't mention anything about texting Hunter first. Although, of course, she could just be forgetting to say that part. And I don't know, again, if it makes a big difference in this case, but I wanted to point it out. So when Candace and Summer get to the house, Hunter says that Candace told him that her 3 boys were with their dad for the day at work. However, Candace has completely denied saying that. She said that the boys had actually stayed home alone that morning, watching TV back at their place. I assume the police have probably sorted this out and figured out where the boys actually were that morning. However, this information has not been released to the public. While they were at his place, Hunter says he remembers Candace talking about how she wanted to take Summer fishing, and he asked if he could join. So again, he asked his mom's permission to go with them. She says yes, and he joins them. But before they're able to actually go fishing, Candace gets a call from Candy saying that she's ready to be picked up from the hospital. Hunter still wants to join, so he goes with them. After the 3 of them pick up Candy, they all go to the drive-through pharmacy, and this is where things start to not match up. I mentioned in Candace's version of events that Dawn calls her while they're in line at the pharmacy to check in on them. And Hunter also says that Dawn calls. However, he says that he was calling for something else. After Candace hangs up the phone, Hunter asks her what Dawn had called about. Hunter claims that Candace told him that Dawn had called regarding a strange man that was on their property for a little over a week.
And then while we were in the drive-thru, her husband calls her talking about this dude named on the property that's been there for like a week or so, she told me, that keeps stalking the little kids. I don't even know if he was working at the time.
Okay.
But if he was working, he obviously wouldn't know that there was some dude looking at the little kids. The only thing that she told me from the phone call is that there was some dude, he's been up on the property for a week or 2 trying to, like, I guess she said touch the little kids. That's what I was told.
He's trying to have what?
Touch the little kids.
Touch the kids?
like give him a hug or something. I don't know.
What do you think? Do you think that's true?
I mean, it could be.
Now, Candace has spoken out saying that this just isn't true. When Don was later asked about what Hunter said, this is what he had to say.
You know, I hadn't really heard from her except for she had to go to town to fill her mom's prescription. And so I called at some point because I was going to go home, and she says, well, we're still got to wait for the prescription.
So Don and Candace have the same story, that he called Candace just to check in on them and didn't mention anything about a strange man on their property. So Hunter says after the phone call, they get to the front of the pharmacy and they find out that it's going to take 30 minutes to fill the prescription. And at this point, Candace decides that she wants to take Summer swimming instead of going fishing because it was a hot day. So now instead of fishing, they're going swimming at Warriors Path State Park. Now, just like in Candace's version of events, they make a stop on the way. Only one stop, though, in Hunter's version. He said that this one stop was to a discount tobacco store and that they bought cigarettes for Candy, those Skittle-flavored vapes, and a couple of those twisted teas. So the only difference here is Candy's version of events, they made 2 stops and they bought those vapes at the hippie house. Now, Hunter also says that they went to hippie house. However, he says that that was after they went swimming. I'll explain that in a sec. So when they do make it to Warriors Path, Hunter says that Summer went off to play in the water while Candy stayed in the car so she could work on adding more minutes to her phone. He says while Summer was playing in the water, he and Candace sat on the side watching her, smoking the vape pens and drinking the twisted teas. And again, he's 15 years old. However, he said he asked Candace for the drink and she gave it to him. But of course, Candace completely denies this.
I honestly didn't see him drink nothing down here. I don't know what he's talking about. I really don't.
All right. So it's your word against his, basically.
Pretty much.
Okay. On this scenario right
Yes.
here.
And then Hunter also says that at one point he actually takes off his shirt and goes in the water because Summer was underneath the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And of course, kids will just do this, see how long they can hold their breath, joke around. But Hunter said he wanted to be sure that she was okay. So he got in and checked on her.
Okay, so you see a point where Summer is underwater.
For like 10 to 15 seconds.
Okay, walk me through that.
And so I'll go in calm as heck because I know she might just be messing around.
Did you think she was injured?
No,
Could she have been?
She could have been. I mean,
Help me understand that.
I mean, she could have been when she got back into the car, like how the water gets through your lungs and everything else.
Now, this has been highly scrutinized because Candace claims that this never happened. She said that nothing dangerous or scary happened while Summer was swimming at all. And you do see in the video that Candace took that the water is only, a couple feet deep, but Summer is very short. So that leaves people wondering and questioning whether or not Summer actually went under the water at all. Hunter says she did. Candace says she didn't. So this is one of those he said, she said moments where we kind of just have to think for ourselves. Once it was time to leave, Hunter says that their next stop was to Hippie House. And remember, Candace says that this happened before they went swimming.
From the water hole,
Where do you go?
we go to this thing called Hippie House.
Hippie house?
And they sell like THC, CBD, the
Got
vapes.
it, got it. So she's going to cop like another vape, or is she
Yeah,
buying
she
CBD?
She was gonna go in there to see what was in there because it just had opened.
Obviously, Hunter and Summer aren't allowed to go into this shop, so the two of them stayed in the car, and according to Hunter, they watched TikToks. When the adults got back to the car, Hunter claims that Candace had bought 2 vape pens, one for her and one for him, which Candace denies. And then after this, they go to Walgreens to pick up the prescription. After Walgreens, they go to Sonic and get slushies, and then they make one more additional stop at the grocery store. Hunter says that he and Summer sat in the car during these other stops as well, just watching TikTok. Now, another huge discrepancy here is Hunter says that they were in the store for about an hour, and Candace says they were only in there for 5 or 10 minutes. Obviously, when we're younger, our perception of time is way different. Hunter is, only 15, but that's a big difference, an hour versus 5 to 10 minutes. So Hunter says then he helps get all the groceries in the car, and then all of them head back to Hunter's house. So that's where obviously Hunter's recollection of things ends. He's back at home now, so let's switch back to Candace's version of events. And I know, guys, I know this is confusing. This is a hard one. So now it's just Candace, Candy, and Summer again, and they are headed back home to Beach Creek. Once they get home, Candace says that they unpacked all the groceries. Candace also had her sons come out and help them grab some of the groceries as well, which is confusing because, she said it was only 5 to 10 minutes. They just grabbed a few essentials. I don't know how much help you would need, but they had also gotten groceries for Candy, so they separated her groceries from their groceries. And then she says they all went about their day doing their typical activities. They put the TV on, they hung out in their house, and at some point Candace decides to do a load of laundry. Then a bit later, Candy decides that she wants to replant some flowers into different pots that are outside of their house. And she asks Candace for help. Candace knew that Summer would also love to help, so she asked her to join them, and she did. So according to Candace, the three of them then spent 30 to 40 minutes planting these flowers. Then when they're finished, Summer asks Grandma Candy if she can have a piece of candy, as this is something her grandma normally does for her when she helps her with things. And of course she said yes, and she gives her the candy. So after this, Summer tells her mom that she wants to go play with her brothers. So Candace says that she walks Summer about halfway back to the house and then watches her walk the rest of the way into the house. Candace then says she calls out to the boys, asks them to watch Summer while she stays back and helps Grandma Candy with her knee brace. Candace says that she was only with Candy for about 2 minutes before she walked back into her own house. However, some reports have said it could be closer to 5 minutes. Either way, she heads back to the house, goes through the front door, and doesn't see Summer. So she calls out to the boys asking where she is. And they told her that Summer went downstairs to play with her toys.
And I watched her walk into the kitchen where the boys were watching TV. And I told the boys, I said, watch Summer, I'll be back. And within 2 minutes I came back. And I asked the boys where their sister was, and they said, she went downstairs, Mom, to play with her toys in the playroom. I said, okay.
Now, it wasn't at all weird for Summer to go downstairs by herself and play. She did this all the time. In fact, her bedroom and her parents' bedroom was downstairs. So Candace walks over to the stairs, which is more of a crawl space. I'll kind of explain their house in a sec. But she calls downstairs to Summer and gets no response.
And I yelled downstairs for her a couple times, and I didn't get no answer, which was unusual because usually she always answers me. And so I went down there to check, and she was nowhere in sight. She was just gone.
Candace says that she immediately panicked and called Don, and he told her to call 911, to hang up with him and call 911. And they ended up both actually calling 911.
Oh, I freaked out. I called Donnie because that's what I do automatically. I freak out,
You called Don.
I called Donnie. I said, I cannot find Summer. Come home now. He's like, call the cops. So I threw my phone down on the back of his pickup, ran over to my mom, picked up her phone because the only one that gets out there is AT&T.
Okay.
So I picked up her phone, I dialed 911. I said, I cannot find my daughter. And they sent people out, and I wasn't just going to stand there and wait for them to send people out.
Right.
I jumped in my mom's truck, and I went down the driveway as fast as I could. I went everywhere I could possibly think, every road, which way. I didn't see no cars. I didn't see nobody at all. And I was like flipping out. I was a hot mess, as you call it.
Okay.
It makes no sense.
Also, here's Don talking about those moments right before Summer had disappeared.
And my one son told me, that Summer wanted him to go down and play with toys with her. And he's like, no, Summer, I'm playing this game, I'm not going down there. So she goes down there by herself. As far as we know, that's the last she was seen was by our boys.
So the official missing persons report was made to the Hawkins County Police Department around 6:30 p.m. on June 15th, 2021. The 911 calls that both Candace and Dawn made have not yet been released at this point. However, the calls to dispatch, or the dispatch portion, was released. And there is one part of that just does not line up with the story that the family is telling. In the call, you can actually hear the dispatcher say that Summer went missing while Candace was on a walk. I'll play that now.
Being around from 110, 110 Ben Hill Road off of Beach Creek should be the first residence on your right. Reference to a missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in, advised that the mother had went for a walk, came home, now they can't find her. They've been yelling for her. She's been gone for about 10 minutes now.
They also say that Summer is 4, she's actually 5, but I don't think this mix-up was, of any importance. Now, we don't know if that dispatch call was connected to Dawn's call to 911 or Candace's call to 911. If it's a response to Dawn's 911 call, it is possible that he was confused about what exactly Candace had said if she called him in a panic. In that case, he, could have misreported it to police. If this was a response to Candace's call, it is possible that the dispatcher misunderstood what Candace is saying. We just have no way to clarify at this point. But it's also possible that Candace was not where she said she was. Of course, I never want to make, assumptions about discrepancies, but this is being looked at in the investigation, so I feel like it's important to share this information. Candace said that she was not going to wait for police to arrive to start searching for her daughter. So she sends the boys down to the creek with walkie-talkies and a buck knife, and she goes and talks to some neighbors. She also asks these neighbors to start looking for Summer as well. And according to Johnson City Press, Don arrived home before law enforcement even showed up. And he says that when he got home, he already saw neighbors combing through the woods looking for Summer. And he also said that it was in that moment, while he's approaching their property in his car, that he realized that Summer was abducted.
I knew right away that she was abducted. I knew that right away, and that's what I told them from the beginning. But they have to go through their, I forget the word.
Investigation.
They have to do one step at a time, I guess.
Now, there's been a lot of speculation about Don arriving home before the police because his work site was like 45 minutes away. Some say almost an hour. So unless it took the cops an hour to respond to a missing child, which is possible, it seems kind of odd that Don arrived first. And unfortunately, it's impossible to confirm because it has not been released what time the police responded to the call or what time they arrived at their property. Don says that he just drove as fast as he could back home. So of course, it is possible that he just made it home before police. I'm not sure. I don't know if it means anything, honestly, but I felt like it should be shared. And I know people in this case are very frustrated with the lack of information that the police are sharing. However, they're saying it's because their investigation is active and they're trying to prevent, it from being compromised in any way. Now, their house is a little bit confusing. There is a door in the basement that leads outside, so that is the only door that Summer would have been able to go out of without her brother seeing. This door is also not visible directly from the front door of Candy's trailer, but it is less than 50 feet away from where Candace and her mom claimed to have been when Summer was allegedly taken. So if someone did take Summer, they would have had to go out through this door. And Candace and Dawn both say that they're not sure if the door was actually locked. They just can't remember. But we do know that there was no forced entry. So it's probably fair to assume that the door was unlocked. And since day one, Candace has been absolutely adamant that there's no way Summer would have walked out of the house and just walked into the woods on her own, that she just never would have done that. She said if she did go outside, that she was probably walking out to their swing. The swing is very close to their house, and Summer did like to play on the swings. Candace said that she would really try to make Summer aware of how scary it could be outside of their property, that there were all kinds of scary bugs and creatures and even bears, coyotes. So she said that she's positive that she would have been too scared to walk off alone.
My daughter never goes out into the woods because we've taught her there's dangerous snakes, there's bears, there's a pack of dogs, there's coyotes, there's everything magical out there in the woods that could hurt you.
Now, I'm sure we're all thinking that if Summer was taken by someone out of the house, that Candy and Candace probably would have heard or seen something, especially considering how close Candy's trailer is to the basement door that Summer would have had to go out of. Even if Summer wasn't able to make any noise to alert them to her, a lot of people have brought up, they had a lot of dogs. Wouldn't one of the dogs have barked? Maybe they would have heard just general sound, maybe leaves crunching, anything. But Candace says that their dogs just aren't barkers and that someone could have easily come up through the woods very quietly, gone into the house, taken Summer, and left without making a noise. There's been a lot of speculation, especially on Reddit, about how that would be possible, how someone would walk through the woods without making any noise, then going into their house, grabbing Summer, and leaving all without making any noise. That seems kind of hard to believe, right? But like I said, they remain adamant that they did not hear any noise. They do have a huge property, but their actual living space is pretty small. And if someone came and abducted Summer and left with her, this would have all happened within a few minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, and within 50 feet of 5 other people living at the residence without any of them hearing it. It's hard to believe. That first day that Summer was reported missing, there were about 60 to 80 people that took part in the search for her. That included people from Church Hill Rescue Squad, Hawkins County Rescue, Hawkins County EMA and EMS, Hawkins County E911, Hawkins County Sheriff's Office, and the Goshen Valley Volunteer Fire Department. They even brought in cadaver dogs in hopes that they, would pick up Summer's scent. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, or the TBI, was also immediately contacted and put on the case. And it's really important that I emphasize that the Wells property has a ton of hills. They have creeks and really rough terrain, and it only added to the difficulty of their search. The Highway Patrol's aviation unit and the Ballad Health's Heart Air Service were both able to provide aerial searches of the area, and the search went into the night. And at 12:06 a.m. on Wednesday, June 16th, the TBI issued an endangered child alert. Then, the next morning at 11 a.m., June 16th, an official Amber Alert was issued as well. Summer has been described as 5 years old, with blonde hair, blue eyes, standing 3 feet tall and weighing about 40 pounds. She was last seen wearing a pink top with gray sweatpants and was likely barefoot. A press conference was held to notify the public and to encourage people in the Beach Creek community to check their trail cams or to come forward with anything that they may have seen the day prior that was unusual or the days leading up to Summer's disappearance.
The search for 5-year-old Summer Wells remains ongoing. Today, teams continue to search the area around Ben Hill Road, and officers and agents continue to follow up on any leads that come in. Many have asked how they can assist with the search. At this time, we are not asking for volunteers to assist. What we are asking is for residents to continue to share photos of Summer and information from credible sources.
The police ended up combing over 680 acres in just the first few days of the search for Summer. And in total, police ended up looking through more than 5,000 acres of land. The first day that Summer was reported missing, Candace was taken into the police station for a polygraph test. However, she did not complete it because she was so distraught. She said she was unable to stop crying, she could barely speak, so she was brought in 5 days later to take the test again. Dawn and Candy also took polygraph tests, and all 3 of them passed. However, we know that polygraphs can, in some cases, be a useful tool, but they're not admissible in court. They don't really matter much. They're not going to sway an investigation one way or the other. So a few weeks after the initial search, Candace actually came forward and said that she was unhappy with the way that the search was unfolding. In particular, she was most upset about the cadaver dogs that were brought in. She said that she wasn't notified that the dogs were coming, and because of that, she wasn't able to get all of her dogs inside before they came. And she believes that the cadaver dogs could have been distracted by her dogs and that they wouldn't know where to go or what to do. And this is confusing and clearly not true because the dogs actually did pick up Summer's scent. And the scent that they traced actually led them down a path that's close to that back basement door. This goes straight down the ravine to the main road, and at that point the dogs lost her scent.
So the dogs kind of came down this trail here?
Yeah.
It's pretty steep.
Yeah. And I didn't know the dogs even had a trail down through here till the police dogs followed it all the way to the road.
Will says he overheard authorities say search dogs followed Summer's scent down the trail to the road,
before losing it.
And after learning about this, Candace and Dawn are insistent that someone parked their car at the bottom of the hill on Ben Hill Road, walked up the steep ravine, grabbed Summer from their basement, and then brought her back down into their car and drove away with her. Since the beginning, both Candace and Dawn have been adamant that Summer was abducted, and they still believe that to this day. And here we are, over 6 months later, and the police are still saying this. They still say there is absolutely no evidence of an abduction. Before we go any further, let's talk about their house for a second, because I know people are confused. So there was a podcaster who somehow Candace trusted to do a little walkthrough of their house. You walk right into the main floor, there's a TV, there's an area where they hang out. The boys also have their sleeping areas upstairs. Then there is a crawl space, and it kind of looks like a table until you go over to the other side and you see it's actually a little staircase down into their basement. So they have to kind of crawl backwards down into the basement, and it opens right into their master bedroom where the two of them sleep. And then if you keep going, there's another little room, and that's Summer's room. However, a lot of the time she just slept in her parents' bed. The TBI and the Hawkins County Police have been very outspoken in saying that the family has been nothing but cooperative with them, but they've also said that nobody is being ruled out as a suspect. Candace has also been very publicly frustrated about several of her neighbors refusing to let police search their property, and I understand that frustration. They said that there have been neighbors that they have become friendly with through all of this, and that have helped a lot, but there have been some who have been very unfriendly and unwilling to help, and they would like to search their property, but they have been unable to. Obviously, these neighbors haven't done anything wrong, and a lot of people don't want police searching their property unless there is a reason to. However, when there is a missing child, normally most people will do whatever they can if it helps in the search. But there is no, legal obligation for these neighbors to allow the police to search their land. There's one neighbor in particular who is named Jody Sue Brown, and she actually came forward and said that not long before she learned that Summer went missing, her and her kids heard a very creepy, shrill kind of scream that was coming from outside of their cabin. And she actually described this scream as being animalistic, but not from an animal. She said that that day she had been on high alert because of property things that had happened the day prior. I guess there was some property in that area that was up for sale, and a few times people had come knocking on her door trying to find the land that was for sale, which led to a dispute about property lines. And because of this, Jody Sue and her kids were on the lookout that day. She said that her and her kids were out that day surveying the land when they heard this scream.
So we were listening for noise, everything was kind of quiet. While we were out at one point doing survey lines, and there was a flash of a car that went up Candace and Donnie's driveway. Something about it struck me wrong.
We heard just this kind of shrill, almost animalistic scream.
It wasn't a dog, it wasn't an animal.
She says that she remembered hearing a truck door slam, and she thought it was suspicious. However, she just dismissed it at the time as one of the parents coming home. Now, interestingly enough, the police and the TBI have interviewed Jody Sue, and they say that all of her claims actually have nothing to do with the case.
She's been interviewed numerous times by not only my agency, but the TBI and the FBI, and we don't find anything with that complaint or information related to this case.
I wish every day that when I heard that scream, I hadn't tried to dismiss it.
Candace has continued to be vocal this entire time that she doesn't think the police are doing enough to find Summer, and she says that she thinks it's because her family is poor. Now, before I go more into the investigation, we're actually going to backtrack a little bit and continue going from Hunter's point of view of that day. So after Hunter was dropped off at home by Candace, Summer, and Candy, he actually went to the park with his girlfriend. He was there when he says he got the call from Candace saying that Summer was missing. And at first, I guess he thought that she was joking around, like messing with him. I don't know why someone would do that.
She was like, Summer's missing. So I was just like, okay, well, why don't you just go look outside? She says, I have been, she ain't there. I said, well, call Allie then, because I don't know if she's still pulling a leg. Because if I tell her to call Allie, she'll call me back, and then I'll call Mom and be like, did she tell you this, or was she just messing around?
Got it. So you call your mom
Yeah, I call her on Facebook after she picks up.
and gave her a heads up that
Candace was gonna call.
Candace going to call her and tell her that Summer's missing. Straight up.
He said that he didn't hear from her again until the following day, Wednesday, when she was at the police station. She called him right from there. Then their next contact was the following day, Thursday, 2 days after Summer initially went missing. And then Hunter said that Candace ended up coming to his house to talk to him about her trip to the police station and also to ask him not to tell anyone that she had given him one of those twisted teas underage. And in that same visit, Hunter actually said he snuck into Candace's car to see if there was anything suspicious.
I act like I'm grabbing my phone because they're just about the same.
Right. So you play it like.
So I put mine where hers was.
Got it.
And so I grabbed her phone. And see, I'm good with tech. I know where everything you can hide is. And so I went through her Google Photos, if that's what you want to call it.
Okay.
The gallery part.
Okay.
And so where you can delete things, they don't just delete, they go to your trash. And so when I looked in there, I seen 13 messages between her and her I'm gonna say drug dealer because he is. I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to name his name, but yeah, all I seen was the first message before she started walking up to the mailbox to get up here is that it was done, and I was gonna read the next message of what she said. And she just started running up here, and I literally just slid my phone in my pocket and just put hers there. It's like, she asked me if I went through her phone. I said no, why? Because I cleared it all out before she can get up here.
And since then, Hunter has been advised not to have any contact with the Wells family whatsoever. Also, his cell phone was taken into TBI custody so that they could further corroborate his story. Police did make an announcement on June 26, which is 11 days after Summer initially went missing, that they were looking for a specific truck. They said that they are looking for the owner of a 1998 to 2000 red Toyota Tacoma that had white buckets in the back and also a ladder rack. They also clarified that they think that this person may have witnessed something, but was not a suspect necessarily. And since this announcement has been made, no one has come forward as knowing the owner of the truck or being the owner of the truck. So then 6 weeks after Summer disappears, the other 3 boys are removed from the home by CPS. A lot of the initial reporting on this said that they were not able to share the reasons why they were being removed because of a few different reasons. First of all, because they're minors, and number 2, because a judge had put a gag order on their CPS case. But Don has spoke out publicly about what was going on and what led to their sons being removed. He said that Summer's disappearance has just taken a huge toll on him and his marriage.
There's a gag order on the boys. I'm not supposed to talk about them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. They're in custody.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully they're okay, and you get to see them.
They're fine.
Okay.
And he said in the weeks leading up to the boys being removed, he was drinking excessively and other stuff, whatever that means.
I ain't gonna lie to you, I went off the deep end.
Did you? I can totally understand.
I started drinking and other stuff and just lost it.
Yeah.
But I'm back on track. I mean, no drinking, no nothing.
And since day one, in this case, people have been very suspicious of Don, coming after his character, as well as Candace's, saying that they have been involved in whatever happened to Summer, which of course is a possibility. But he said having that speculation on him just really got to him and he started drinking more. Also, Don said that he's glad that the boys aren't in the home anymore because it was becoming unsafe for them. And that's because since the beginning of this, there's been a lot of coverage on this case and just a ton of public speculation, which drives more media coverage. And people have actually been coming to the Wells property as early as July. Don says people have just been showing up even in the middle of the night, and so he believed it's safer for his sons to be elsewhere during this time. Now, we did hear in that last clip that Don had stopped drinking since the boys were taken. However, here is his mugshot from October 2021. Don was actually arrested for a DUI. He was pulled over after attempting to make a left-hand turn onto a closed road, but wound up driving off the road into the grass shoulder near the Hawkins County and Greene County line. The officer noted that Don had bloodshot eyes and a half-empty bottle of alcohol sitting on the passenger seat. Don said that he had taken a few shots and he had actually taken that bottle of alcohol away from Candace. I guess the two of them were having an argument and he didn't want her to continue drinking, so he said he put the bottle in his car. But ultimately, he was arrested and held on a $5,750 bond and then released the next day. And this is not Don's first time being arrested, actually. Prior to this, Don actually had 3 different charges against him, including felony charges in Utah and a domestic assault charge made by Candace herself. It turns out that less than a year before Summer went missing, Candace had actually filed an order of protection for herself and the kids against Don after an argument that led to concern about the potential use of a firearm. He was arrested on October 15th, 2020 on charges of unlawful possession of a firearm and domestic assault. But Candace ended up dropping these charges just 2 months before Summer went missing. So getting back to Summer's disappearance, after searching land, air, and water for weeks, investigators were not able to find a shred of evidence that linked back to Summer. Sheriff Ronnie Lawson with the Hawkins County Police Department has said that in the weeks and months following her disappearance, they have gone through hundreds of tips but have yet to find any reliable information that would lead to a discovery. The Wells home has been searched on more than one occasion, including their basement, their crawl spaces, and all the family vehicles, outbuildings, barrels, and other items found on their property. The TBI has also brought in additional canine units that are trained in specific search methods to comb through the property as well, but they've turned up nothing. Search warrants and subpoenas have also been issued, allowing them to search any available digital evidence, including cell phones, computers, and social media accounts from the Wells family. And in addition to the aerial searches that were done immediately after Summer went missing, the investigators have brought in dive teams as well to search bodies of water around the Wells home, and they have found nothing. They also say that neighbors and any known sex offenders in the area in Beach County have been interviewed as well. Now, as I've said, Candace and Don have said from the beginning that they believe that their daughter was abducted. They think that she was down playing in the basement, that someone came down there, took her out of the basement, brought her down out of the property into the ravine, and that's where they had their car parked. They put her in the car and got away very quickly. And the two of them have also talked about who they think may have abducted their daughter. Candace has brought up the idea of it being one of the local sex offenders in the area, as well as being potentially a city worker. Like I said, the TBI did interview all these people in that area, and as far as I know, they've all been ruled out. And like I said, she also mentioned city workers, which is kind of random, but she's clarified and said that there were some city workers who were near their home the day that Summer went missing, and maybe they could have been involved. Don also has some of his own theories. I mentioned earlier that Don has been worried about the drug problem in their area and the drug gangs that are reportedly in Beach Creek. So that's been one of his concerns. However, he's also mentioned someone that he had to fire just a few weeks prior to Summer going missing. Also, Don thinks that it's possible that this one guy that worked for him could be responsible because he ended up having to fire this guy the day before Summer went missing. And he said that this guy just did not take it well at all. And the reason he had to fire him was because he suspected him of being on meth.
Did he take that well?
No, he was extremely mad.
Did he know where you lived?
Yes.
And have you heard from or seen him since?
No. Our investigators have talked to him, and he's talked, I guess pretty well. But I mean, the day after Summer had come up missing, he called my boss and he was crying and saying some really oddball things. My boss has a really good memory, so he remembered every word of it. And,
like what was he saying?
Like, the hills have eyes. I got too close to that family. My kids can't see me in the back of a police car again.
But that whole theory doesn't really go much further than that. There's another theory that there could be involvement from the Cornbread Mafia. And I had never heard of this. This is something that I've actually seen the media bring up several times. And I guess the Cornbread Mafia is any type of gang that's happening in the more rural areas, like in Tennessee, but it's also in other states. I don't know much about it. If you know any more about it, feel free to leave a comment below. But researching that online gets very confusing. And the Cornbread Mafia theory has been brought up to Dawn and Candace a few different times in interviews. And Dawn says that although they hadn't heard of this group exactly, he did know about some similar hillbilly mafias, as he referred to them. But he is insistent that they are not involved with them and would never allow their children near this type of crime. At this point, everybody involved in this case is still being considered a potential person of interest. And the Wells family has definitely been of interest to the public. I mean, I'd say most of the comments I've seen online or anyone talking about this case believes that the family is involved with Summer's disappearance. Of course, we have no way of proving that at this point. Again, everyone in this case is innocent until proven guilty. Candace has said that she's felt unjustly bullied and attacked on social media for possibly having something to do with Summer's disappearance, even though she said from day one that she's innocent. And I'm sure that it would be really hard if you truly weren't involved to have people speculating that you were. But at this point, we just don't know. However, I do want to point out that there have been plenty of instances where the public has assumed the family is involved with something, and later on that is disproven. The child was abducted or something else happened. However, there are tons of cases, and just statistically, it's likely that families are involved in the disappearance of a child. But like I said, at this point, we just don't know. There's not enough evidence either way. So back in November, Candace and Dawn made an appearance on Dr. Phil. It was actually November 11th and 12th, and the opportunity for them to bring Summer's case to a bigger audience was, too hard to pass up, even though it was clearly difficult for them. I don't think I can put any of this in because Dr. Phil is really strict about that copyright, or CBS, I should say. But in the first episode, they did kind of a sit-down interview with Dr. Phil. They went over the story of what happened that day. I'll have it all linked below if you want to check it out as far as what's available on YouTube. The second episode was a little bit different. Candace and Dawn ended up sitting down with two body language experts to talk about Summer and the investigation. And when they were interviewing them, they start bringing up the idea of the Cornbread Mafia. And for some reason, this really upsets Candace. I don't know if it was this in particular or something else that they said, but it was at this moment that Candace gets extremely emotional, takes off her mic, says that she feels like she's being interrogated, and walks out. Obviously, this has been highly scrutinized and many people think it's odd. And they actually have their own YouTube channel, and Candace ended up putting a statement out on there talking about why she was so emotional and why she walked out of the interview. She talked about how she didn't really want to do the interview in the first place, and while they were doing the interview, there had been a potential lead on Summer, which didn't end up panning out, and she was extremely worried and stressed over that lead the entire time. She also said that it just hurts too much to talk about Summer and she couldn't take it anymore. But those body language experts thought the whole thing was really strange. The two body language experts explained that they, can't read minds, so they don't know for sure, but they did say that Dawn and Candace had exhibited some guilty body language when discussing Summer's disappearance. Dawn has gotten a lot of criticism as well for making pretty conflicting statements and kind of self-editing while he speaks. Like he'll start a sentence and then stop and start over again with something completely new. And while all of this is very interesting, Dr. Phil is for entertainment purposes and it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't show us 100% that they are guilty or involved in any way in their daughter's disappearance. We still just do not know. And unfortunately, that's sort of where we're at today. I mean, I really thought that in the last 6 months, something would have came up. There would have been some good lead, some shred of evidence, and there has been nothing. And I'm just completely baffled as to what happened to Summer. The investigators are still saying that they consider everyone a person of interest. Also, they have said that if they have uncovered any new information, unless it's important for the public to know, they are keeping everything close to the vest on this one. So It's very possible there are things that we just don't know at this point, and maybe those things will come out in the next few months. Now, there was a second large-scale search for Summer. It took place over 2 days, starting on November 30th, and 12 different agencies actually aided in the search effort, and it took place right on the Wells property. The TBI has said that they were heavily relying on the change in foliage to finally bring investigators more answers, which obviously they are referring to areas which were overgrown at one point and difficult to reach, and they're now cleared out and accessible as the weather has gotten colder. But unfortunately, these searches did not bring up any new findings. As of recently, there have been groups of people who are taking it upon themselves to find any evidence of Summer's whereabouts. And while the goal of these people is to find Summer and to get justice for her, it has caused a lot of issues with the Wells family. Some people, I guess, had trespassed onto the Wells property during their searches, and Candace ended up calling the police. She filed a complaint, and as far as I know, there have been no just personal searches going on unless they're actually conducted by investigators. So as of right now, it's been over 6 months since Summer disappeared, and police are asking anyone in the Hawkins County area or surrounding areas to come forward with any information that may lead them to Summer or to answers as to what happened. I know we are all hoping for Summer's safe return, and when there's not a lot of information, of course we can go to speculation, and it's hard not to. But at this point, it's important to try to focus on the facts here, because social media and speculation has actually been a big issue in this case, not just for the family, but for investigators as well, and just false information spreading online. So of course, be careful out there when doing your own research or sharing information. Make sure that it is accurate. It's important to the integrity of this case and to Summer. This case is very upsetting, especially with such little solid information. Summer looked like such a sweet and playful little girl, and thinking about what could have happened to her or where she could be right now is just devastating. I wish there was more that I could share. There is some stuff out there, but it's very speculative and none of it's confirmed. And I really just wanted to stick to the facts in this case, especially since this is an active, ongoing investigation. But I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this one below. So let me know what you're thinking. But that is going to be it for me today and for this year. Yep, that is the last video of 2021. I will be back in January of 2022 with some very interesting content that I'm already working on, actually. I'm really excited to see what you guys think about this next one. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. I hope you're having a great day. Stay safe out there, and I will see you next time.